The rowers lifted their oars into the air and let the small craft coast to the pebbled shore. Tostig tried to coax the Ragnarok as close to Markland as the depth of the water would let him. Once the keel grounded on the smooth pebbles, he jumped overboard and steadied the boat. One by one the group stepped into the frigid surf, separating Markland from Vinland, and waded through the water to the beach. They patiently waited there while Jarlebank, Tostig, and the 2 warrior escorts carried the boat into some bushes. They tore branches from the trees to place along the side of the boat, concealing it from any passers-by. An unusual inland wind chased the salt from the air with the smell of damp leaves and mud, as Gudrid, the 2 warriors, Ingebjorg and Askr, Snorri Thorbrandsson, Tostig, Jarlebank, Adam, and Freydis Eriksdottir, entered the dense forest. Swarms of mosquitoes and blackflies, hungry for warm blood, immediately attacked the group. The rustling of underbrush and the buzzing of insects quickly replaced the lapping waves. Soon they were out of sight of the beach and swatting the air of slapping voracious insects from their exposed skin. Unlike the flat, plateau-like landing site of Vinland, Markland was a place of high shoreline cliffs and towering pine trees. No one in the party had ever seen trees of this enormous size, 40 cubits high and 6 cubits in diameter. 3 adults could easily fit into one tree trunk. There were enough raw materials just in the short walk from the edge of the forest to their present position to build a small fleet of ships, wood for the hulls, the keels, the oars, and the masts, and pine tar for the sealant. Gudrid wondered if they would come across a flock of sheep that could provide wool for the sail. She now understood why this land was so magical, and with the death of Torvald, the land seemed necromantic as well. They followed the afternoon path of the sun. Tostig used the same principles that he used to navigate at sea to traverse this wooded land. Unlike the sea, the land did not require that he consider wind direction or ocean current. Compared to the skill required to navigate the oceans, this was as easy as a child pushing a toy boat in his morning bath. Once the sun had set and the stars dotted the sky, the wind calmed and the biting mosquitoes and blackflies abated. The burning fire was the center of focus as they lay back and relaxed after their meal. Adam stared into the flames. He didn't know what he was looking for, only hope for a clue or a sign from God that would help him find the Chaldees. He wasn't even positive that Markland was in fact the land he sought. The story of Ari's whereabouts could have been exaggerated, or the gaps in the narrative could have been filled in by the human mind, as the mind generally does. They could be thousands of dagger away, on another part of the continent, or another island entirely. He had prayed that he would find some sign that civilized travelers trekked along this route, had hoped to pick up some sort of trail that would indicate that they were getting close. He knew that it would be like finding a needle in a haystack, but he also knew that whoever they came across, native or otherwise, would know of the Chaldees if they were here. In this wilderness, they would stand out like a group of heathens in the Church of Rome. Firelight glinted in Snorri Thorbrandson's golden blonde hair as he shifted broad shoulders to look at Adam. "They call you Adam of Bremen," Snorri said, more as a statement than a question. "Yes," Adam replied, knowing that the young man's brashness had more to do with his age than anything that Adam had done. "Why are you here?" "I am on a mission for my church." "And would this mission benefit only your people, or would it benefit our country as well?" Freydis interrupted. "It was by the order of your—" "Enough," Gudrid snapped. "The separate reasons for our journeys do not have to be told. We are here, and that is enough." "But Gudrid," Snorri begged, "I would like to know if Adam's journey is for the same reason." Gudrid started to retort, but Adam interrupted. "It is fine, Gudrid. I am happy to answer. If our missions are to be successful, there must be honesty among us. I will not have you swear to secrecy because I trust that you all will abide by the unwritten code of a warrior and will therefore keep your own counsel in this matter." "Very well, Adam, but I hold you responsible," Gudrid warned. Everyone watched intently as Adam opened up his wooden box of Christian vestments. There were 3 impressions in the silk interior, each holding a particular item: a silver chalice, a container of holy water, and a bottle of wine. He picked up the chalice with one hand and the bottle of wine with the other. Before anyone in the group could blink, the cork was off the bottle of wine and he was filling the chalice. He took a gulp, then began, "I am on a mission to return some important items stolen from the church, and to apprehend the criminal responsible. If I cannot find the criminal, then my orders are to find and return the items at all costs. I have reason to believe that he is hiding on Markland, perhaps with a religious order known as the Chaldees." The group continued staring at Adam as he took another gulp from the chalice. He still held the wine bottle in his other hand. He poured himself another drink and continued the story. "I have been chasing this man for the last 10 years of my life, and I finally believe that this will be the end of my journey. God has shown it to me in a vision. I am looking forward to going home to Meissen in Saxony." "What makes you think he is in this land?" Snorri questioned. Adam quickly explained about the Chaldees. "An old trader named Raffin said that the man I seek was captured by the monks of this colony and baptized by them. But I do not know for sure if I will find him here. I will have to trust my instincts and have faith. If he doesn't want to be found, finding him will be very difficult," Tostig interjected. "Yes, that is true, Tostig. But I have several advantages in my favor. He doesn't know he's being hunted, and being in possession of these stolen items gives him security that may lie on a false premise." "And what false premise would that be?" Freydis asked. "That he's gotten away with his crimes." Tostig's eyes fell to the holes in the front of Adam's habit, then traveled to the torn sleeves and down to the tattered hem. "Adam, are those bloodstains on your robe?" he asked. "Yes, they are. I've been in many dangerous situations in my travels. There have been instances when I've had to fight my way out." Gudrid began to consciously distance herself from the conversation. A strange, intermittent sensation that the group was being watched distracted her. It was an unsettling feeling, even permeating the shield of security that the group represented. As the fire slowly burned down to embers, so did the conversation and the energy of the group. They found staying awake harder and harder as the toils of the day took hold of them. Gudrid had assigned Freydis to the first watch. Adam had volunteered, but she couldn't trust him just yet. She suspected that his allegiance to his fellow clerics outweighed his allegiance to the group, and that presented a danger that she could not ignore. The next morning, Gudrid watched the sun rising, but was unable to enjoy it. Her head jerked and twitched toward every sound. Even the morning birds squawking at the rising of the sun and fluttering through the branches stole her attention from the peace of the morning. As the group gathered up their gear, Gudrid's feelings didn't change. She felt the eyes of the forest staring at her. She didn't know how she knew this, nor did she see anyone other than the members of the small party. Gudrid felt sick. Her upset stomach had changed into nausea during the night. She thought she might have eaten some bad meat or berries, but no one else in the group was feeling ill, and they all had eaten the same meal. As the other members of the party finished their morning meal, Gudrid had to walk out of range of the food smells. "Gudrid, you do not look well," Freydis observed, coming up beside her. "I was awake for much of the night with sickness," she admitted. "I have something that may help," Freydis said, bending to root through her pack. She unrolled a leather pouch, pulled out a few twigs of green leaves. "Chew only on the green leaves. It should settle your stomach," she said, handing Gudrid a twig. "Thank you," Gudrid whispered. She picked off a few leaves and put them in her mouth, expecting the worst. She began chewing. The leaves had a slightly bitter taste, but it was not unbearable, and she could keep them down. "When we make camp again, I will brew you some tea," Freydis said. "That should settle your stomach." She stared at Gudrid a moment, as if debating whether to say more. Gudrid could almost sense what Freydis would say. She had been wondering about it herself. "Gudrid, I think you have the look of a woman who is bearing a child," Freydis said with a smile. "I suspected that myself. I have some experience as a midwife. If you like, I can take a look later," Freydis offered. "Yes, please, Freydis," Gudrid answered, relieved. Freydis picked up Gudrid's pack and without a word slung it over her shoulder. Gudrid looked at her thankfully. Her headache and queasy stomach made balancing a little difficult even without carrying extra weight. Tostig proved that his talents weren't confined to the ocean. He found evidence of a used trail, broken branches, torn up moss, and footprints that suggested repeated use and the possibility of a settlement close by, now or in the recent past. The band followed the well-marked trail for one dagger, and Tostig's conclusion was confirmed. They heard voices coming from a clearing in the distance. Whether the travelers were the Chaldees was another story. It could be a group of natives, and an unfriendly group at that. Eric had warned of attacking natives, and his decision not to remain in Vinland for fear of native reprisal. A tale still talked about by Groenlanders. For Norsemen to run, these people would have to be very powerful in numbers, if nothing else. As the group ducked and gently pushed branches out of their path, the same question was on all of their minds. Were these people peaceful? They approached slowly, their steps carefully and consciously placed, so not to startle the owners of the unknown voices into attack. If a larger group of armed Norsemen could not fight off a tribe whose only advantage were their superior numbers, what hope did this small group have? As they were about to step into the clearing, Jarlabank and the vanguard signaled quickly for them to stop. They heard approaching voices, then 4 natives passed by several feet in front of them. "Your theory about the location of these monks may have been wrong," Gudrid whispered to Adam. "Perhaps we could use this as an opportunity," Adam said. "We could attempt to communicate with these natives and take advantage of their knowledge of this land." "We don't know how our presence will be construed," Freda said. "The monks would have to make allies in order to survive in this land. We may be seen as a threat if we just appear from the bushes." All eyes looked to Gudrid, waiting. She knew that the decision was hers alone to make. Her authority over the group was the same burden she had felt when she realized that she was now responsible for the human growing inside her womb. Suddenly the group heard words they understood. They turned and looked into the clearing, where an old man leaned on what looked like a spear, with an almost ornamental spearhead at its tip. He was using it as a walking cane. "Melmtuk, has Calliope returned?" the elderly man asked, approaching the younger men they'd seen earlier. "I have not seen him, father," one of them replied with a heavy accent. "If you see him, could you please send him to Aiden's tent?" "Yes, Abba." Adam pushed his way to the front of the group to get a better view. "I know that monk," he said. "He is Father Wicklow. He must be in his 90s by now." Freydis looked at Gudrid. Gudrid understood the question on Freydis's mind. Even she marveled at the age of the Christian. Was this what the Irish God gave to all those who pledged their devotion to him? Extended life? "I'd like to walk over and introduce myself," Adam insisted. "It would be less startling if we talked to one of the monks than to an entire group." "No," Gudrid ordered. "We need to investigate more before we make our presence known. I'm not going to risk the safety of the group until we find out if we'll be looked upon as friends or enemies," Gudrid said. Just then a Caucasian child ran to the monk and tugged on his robe. "Kartul, go find your sister," the old man scolded. Adam's jaw dropped. "I cannot believe this," he murmured. "How can you explain the children?" Freydis asked. "I may not know much about your order, but I do know that monks and priests are not supposed to procreate." Adam looked at Gudrid. "Gudrid, these are my brethren. Once they see my robes, they will recognize that I am one of them and welcome me." Before Gudrid could answer, a flash erupted in front of her eyes, as if lightning had struck. The forest around her disappeared. She found herself seated on a dirt floor in what appeared to be a cave. A hole in a high rock ceiling provided her only light. She was unable to move her arms. It felt as though they were in restraints. She looked down. Her stomach was larger, and yes, her arms were in chains. They felt weak and sore. Freydis was shaking her. "Gudrid! Gudrid, can you hear me?" "Yes, I can," she said, slowly regaining her senses, and surprised to see the group staring down at her. She lowered her arms, confused. Why were they raised in the air? "What happened? I was somewhere else. In my mind, I mean." "Do you know where you were?" Adam asked. "I was in a cave, chained to a wall. I think I had a vision." Gudrid lowered her head and rubbed her forehead, as if trying to rub the memory away. "Do not worry about me," she said, looking around at their concerned faces. "I am no stranger to these visions. I will be fine once my strength returns." She looked at Adam. "Even you said that the monks could be accomplices in the theft of your religious artifacts. That would make them thieves and potentially dangerous. No, we remain concealed until we find out more." Adam looked about to protest, then clamped his mouth shut. For the rest of the day they traveled over rocky and mossy terrain, not stopping to rest. The sun forced the clouds apart and the damp ground began heating up. changing the cool forest air to a humid ground mist, thick with clouds of blackflies and mosquitoes. The close air tempted them to remove layers of clothing, but that would only expose more flesh to the insects. The gentle aroma of cedar trees stimulated their appetites, and before long they were searching for a place to sit and eat. Adam slowly and deliberately fell back to the end of the line of travelers. The group traveled in pairs, talking to one another in moderate tones, rarely looking behind them, so when Adam decided to jump into the thick brush, he was able to do it without being noticed. He was unhappy in his decision to defy Thorfinn and Gudrid, but he was adamant in accomplishing his mission. The importance of it outweighed the needs of the few that would be affected by his decision. As Gudrid said, even though these were men of the cross, their integrity was in question. Without further investigation, he couldn't determine the morality of these men, and he knew that he could find out more within than without. Adam needed to find out what happened to Ari. The answer to that question would reveal what had happened to the book and the lance. If the Chaldees were in possession of the relics, would they return them to the church? The answer to this would answer the question of their honesty. Or maybe the riddle would be solved by a religious truth that he'd know only by revelation. Adam's intention was not to engage the Chaldees initially, though he was prepared to confront them if need be. He waited in the brush until the low murmur of the group's conversation became the silence of the wind and the chirping birds. By the time Tostig picked up his scent, so to speak, Adam hoped to be back with the group at the campsite, and it wouldn't make a difference. To accomplish that, he needed to move quickly. It would most likely take him the rest of the day to backtrack to the camp. He didn't want to get caught out in the woods after nightfall. If he was attacked or injured, there would be no assistance for him. Adam concentrated on the task at hand. He'd have to develop his strategy for infiltrating the Chaldee site en route. He was used to lying when necessary. He'd done many questionable things that in retrospect conflicted with the tenets of his faith, but he'd felt at the time that they had to be done. He remembered being part of a caravan in the deserts of Arabia when a group of bandits threatened them. The caravan was relatively unarmed except for the few soldiers charged with protecting its contents and members. When the bandits attacked and nearly overwhelmed the soldiers, Adam found himself picking up a sword and using it against the heathens, as he later referred to them when he reported back to the bishop. It wasn't that he'd wanted to use the sword, or that he was skilled at using it. He saw himself as a protector of the faith. When questioned by the bishop, Adam noted that David slaying Goliath was considered an act of faith, and cited many other incidents in the Bible that justified destroying evil. The bishop agreed and ordered all record from the Inquisition destroyed. There were even undercurrents of canonization for his heroic deeds. These and similar thoughts roamed through his mind. They intermixed and conflicted with the teachings from the church. But then, when Adam returned from Arabia, he thought that he'd be excommunicated from the church. Perhaps there were exceptions to the celestial rules. It was not for him to say whether he or the church was right or wrong.